Like under pressure, and you laughed, and now they're
David
playing.
Bowie.
Yeah, it's David Bowie and Queen, but yeah.
Your thoughts, Lucia, as A&M wraps up the 2019 class, and I wanted to talk about the coaching staff efforts first. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you talked about that in a phone conversation earlier that you wanted to talk or you wanted to get into about recruit rankings and kind of where A&M felt. But I wanted to start this discussion with a quote that I got from Dyersburg, Tennessee head coach Bart Stowe yesterday, who is the head coach of Chris Russell. Put this out last night on Texags, and it just kind of gives everybody an idea, a little glimpse into what went down between December and February yesterday and how A&M was able to land a kid that they were essentially dead cold on to start. So this is Coach Bart Stowe's quote on how A&M went in there cold in the early signing period and were able to win out on Chris Russell. He said, you have to give a ton of credit to Bradley Del Pivoto to start. He was consistent in his message and his schedule. When he said he was coming at a certain time, you could bet he'd be there. He'd spent hours with us and Chris. He got to know our entire staff, and he spent time with Chris's family around town. So then you had Coach Elko come in right behind him and do the same thing, but also be able to explain how Chris fit in his scheme. He said, and finally, what else can you say about Coach Fisher? I mean, he was a home run. How can you sit in a room with that guy and not want to go play college football for him? We're already scheduling visits to College Station.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of their more impressive. It's funny you say because it's a 3-star as he's ranked, which is absurd. But I'd say the two most ridiculously ranked players in this class for Texas A&M are Chris Russell and Jalen Wydermyer.
I'd throw Andre White in there too.
You know, in all fairness, I haven't looked to see. I think he did get a 4th,
okay.
And Wydermyer might have too. But I'm just saying, where they have Jalen ranked in state versus, where he is nationally it's absolutely ridiculous when you look at his offer list. I mean, you can compare it to again, I'll go back to the Myron Warren and Hookfin guys that Texas signed, and it's just laughable when you compare those 3 offer lists and say, well, they're all ranked generally in the same area. Isaiah Spiller is another one.
Yeah.
And they moved him up, and it's still a joke. So
Layden Robinson was another one.
Yeah, but see, here's the difference. You like Layden. Yeah, I'm talking about just if you're going off of tape, and I agree that should be all that matters. Like Chris Russell's like that. See, to me, Layden and Chris are
tape
similar.
And offers.
But if you go off
the 2 big things.
offers with tape and measurables, those guys, Wydermyer, Russell, Isaiah, it's ridiculous how underrated they are. And then in Russell's case, he didn't have a ton of offers at that time. They blew up after, but it was because he didn't go attend all the camps and the combines and all that stuff. He just played football, and he's prototype, man. And I'm going to tell you, he's on the short list of guys in that class that the A&M staff is most excited about. And I talked to some people last night now that they can talk on the record about these guys, and they said, man, that dude is an absolute stud. Just a linebacking badass. And the other guy that I heard a lot about yesterday where people are saying, look, Dalen Wright, people aren't talking enough about how good that guy can be.
I don't disagree with either one of those. And guys that are in Dyersburg, Tennessee, that don't do the camps and don't do the combines, they get overlooked. Mm-hmm. That's how that happens because he lives in the northwest corner of Tennessee, and nobody goes up there. It's not.
And I get that one.
A kid at Plano East is not going to be under the radar.
Yeah,
it just don't.
Especially not when the Texas Longhorns go on offer in October, and he's got 6 weeks of football left to play for every high school in the country that comes through the Dallas area. Here's my issue with the whole thing, Brawny. And, again, we're quibbling over. It's funny to see the Longhorns, even the fact that they're celebrating. They're the kings of saying A&M or, loves their moral victories. They're literally going nuts over 2 things right now. Finishing 1 spot ahead in a just blatantly biased ranking.
Gerrymandered and
1 spot, mind you, 3 and 4 in recruiting, which are the most subjective rankings in the world. And while ignoring the fact that A&M's drugged down because they signed a kicker By the way, a really good kicker that you don't mind being drugged down because of. But never mind that. They're also going nuts over beating Georgia and trying to kind of lord that over A&M when A&M beat the team that beat Georgia by 3 touchdowns just a game earlier. But God forbid you should actually pay attention to what's going on. Going back to the important thing, though. Yeah, Chris Russell flew under the radar. But if you're going to adjust rankings and reevaluate guys like you did Hook Finn, like you did Tyler Owens, and like you did Myron Warren after the season and after the early signing date, then why was Chris Russell not reevaluated accordingly? And if he was, then you suck at what you do because there's no reason
they've lost
it.
24/7 has lost a lot of credibility. With what
they have, and it's sad because I'm a big fan of what they do at the network.
It's organized, and it's organized. It's easy to look at. It's easy to find kids. And there are guys that work in that industry that we respect and that organization that we respect and that do a really good job. But what they've done on the national level, like I used to not look at ESPN's rankings a whole bunch because I didn't think ESPN sent enough guys to go see all these kids.
Yep.
ESPN's rankings are more accurate this year. They are. I mean, it's Bama, Georgia, A&M, and so let's get to
Why do you say that, though? Why do you feel
because they've adjusted. Like Tyler Owens deserved to get
moved up.
Up.
Yes, I agree.
And they've done that. Like they've done – but they also bumped Jalen Weidemeyer like they should have.
Yeah.
You know, there were more accurate assessments on A&M's class, which leads me to believe if they're going to do that kind of study and homework, at least with the top 25, they've done it with the majority of those classes, right? But let's talk on the SEC scale, Luch, because Bama, Georgia, Texas A&M. When you hired Jimbo Fisher, let's go back 2 signing classes. It wasn't Bama, Georgia, A&M. It was Bama, Georgia, LSU, Florida, Ole Miss.
Probably Auburn.
And then A&M.
Yeah.
And in really at 1.5 cycles, this thing is almost flipped on its ear. You're still battling the 2 heavyweights in the conference and 2 of the biggest heavyweights in the country. Is A&M able to get over that hump? Until Saban retire? I mean, Alabama just signed 26 of the top 300 on ESPN's list.
Bronny, you saw the team that A&M almost beat kick the crap out of Alabama. You've seen Alabama lose a game in SEC play almost every year since Saban's been there. People don't realize that. They just come out of it. They have got more depth. Bama next year, I think, will be beatable. You know, they could have easily lost their last 2 games this season.
Georgia came back down to earth.
Georgia and Clemson. They're 1 quarterback injury away from having real issues. So just like A&M and Texas and Georgia and LSU and most big teams in college football now. But my point is, no matter how well they recruit, they're going to be the most talented program in college football as long as Saban's there. And Georgia will probably be the only team, right?
Clemson.
That can compete with that in Clemson. But even Clemson,
they're the number 10 class.
Again, I'm asking you, you're saying, can A&M close that gap? Can A&M compete with that? Can A&M?
I know they can't on the field. I'm talking about in these recruiting.
But my point is, do they have to? If you're going to finish 3-6, do you have to finish one?
Well,
I want to. You want to as a coach and as a fan. You want to see your team. But you don't have to.
How many years has Texas finished ahead of A&M in the last 5 years in recruiting?
It
didn't matter on the field.
You don't have to. You have to have the system in place that's consistent, and they have that with Jimbo and his scheme. You have to, his culture, Jerry Schmidt and those guys. You have to have the evaluators. And again, I think Jimbo Fisher and with Austin Thomas sitting up there at his right-hand side, I think the evaluation is going to be there. And then the commitment to evaluate that they do as a staff. They're all held very accountable. There's no one just kind of running off willy-nilly and doing their own thing like I've seen around here in various staffs in the past. The organization and the accountability keeps them from having – you're always going to have evaluation mistakes, but it keeps it to a minimum as compared to other schools. And then there's the development. So, yeah, I mean, to me, A&M needs to live – with the exception of those years where you've got a very small class because of
maybe
numbers.
2020, maybe we don't know.
Maybe if I mean very small, like 16 to 18, when other teams.
Yeah.
If you're in the 22 ranges, but that'll cost you a few spots, whatever. But I'm saying, if you're outside of if you're outside of that top 7, if you're living in that top 7, 8, year in and year out, and yeah, you do need to have top 5 classes mixed in there. There's no question. I think consistently staying at 3 to 7 range with what else is here at A&M and what we've seen already from Jimbo Fisher and his staff, that is more than enough for Texas A&M to compete for and win SEC championships, to find themselves in the playoff discussion more often than not when November rolls around. So, yeah, I mean, look, there are schools that just aren't going anywhere. The question is, are you recruiting in the same realm as the LSUs, the Michigans, the Ohio States, the Floridas, and then, of course, OU's always in there. USC, when they're right, is in there, and the Bamas and Georgias of the world. Right now, I think it's hard to do what Georgia and Bama are doing, because I think Georgia and Bama are willing to do things. I think they're a little over the top right now in how overzealous they are on the recruiting front. And I think
they're getting pretty bold,
frightening
yeah.
to watch. It's pretty eye-opening to see. So, again, where's A&M at? They're right behind Georgia and Bama, and most people might say, well, it's a distant number 3, but it's still number 3. It's still top 5. It's still, look, LSU had a bad day yesterday. I know they got Devontae Lee, and they had a really good class. They had a bad finish yesterday.
Number 7, according to ESPN.
I think they're hurting. They lost to A&M on the field. A&M's got a lot more program momentum right now. A&M recruited a better class per all the rankings.
They hired a better coach.
They hired the coach that LSU wanted. And I think where LSU's sitting is in a bad spot recruiting this, because who they signed from Texas here? Was it just Marcel Brooks?
I believe so.
For all these people worried about out-of-state Raiders and how this has opened the floodgates to the SEC, LSU signed 1 Texan. Alabama, I think, signed 2 in Carter and Banks, and 1 that A&M didn't make a hard finish push for.
OU did a good
OU's
job.
always done it. OU's always done it ever since Bob Stoops has gotten there. But I'm saying, everyone thought by A&M joining the SEC it was going to open up this giant,
Arkansas came in and got players, but none of them that A&M wanted,
Their concern was that Georgia, Alabama, Florida, LSU, Auburn, Tennessee, everybody was going to come over here and just carnage the state. That's not happening. And here's the thing. We don't like saying it, but Texas is going to be up because they play in a dumpster fire league. They're going to have a good year next year if Ellinger stays healthy. And they're going to be up. And Texas A&M is going to be up, and especially from 2020 on, Texas A&M is going to be freaking rolling. And since I've been covering this, guys, and you got to go back a long time where both programs were up at that level, and for an extended period, and I think A&M is the guarantee that's going to be there. I don't know that Texas is the guarantee, but because of the league they're in, I bet my money would be I bet they will. And Alabama's Bama as long as Saban's there. The big loser in all of that is LSU. They are the big loser in all that because they're going to have a very hard time getting guys that A&M, Texas, and especially A&M want. Bama's still going to cherry pick, whether it's 2 or 3 in state a year. LSU is having a difficult time because they're having to fend off Bama and Nick Saban, who used to coach there, to their east. And they're having to fend off Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher, who they wish coached there and used to be an assistant there, to their west. They're in a really bad spot. And I'll tell you this, as much as Aggie fans don't want to see Texas beat LSU early next season, there would be some benefit for A&M to that happening, as much as we don't feel like there would. But I would still say Texas needs to lose so they don't run through the the Big 12. My point, though, is LSU needs that game, Bronny, in the worst way. That is a huge game for Ed Orgeron next September because, again, they're really feeling the squeeze from Jimbo and Nick Saban right now.
On the other side of the break, we'll continue our recruiting talk. You listen to Beliucci Hour Lunch live on The Zone.